Well, hey, Reach, welcome to day 18 of our Christmas reading. And today we'll be reading Matthew chapter 2, verses 16 through 18, and Jeremiah 31:15. We've been in Matthew for the last couple days, and just a few points to know about Matthew. He was a Jewish person, so when he wrote this gospel, he wrote it for a Jewish audience, and he had one goal in mind when he was writing this. He was going to connect Jesus to King David, using many Old Testament references in order to prove who Jesus is, prove he's the Messiah, prove he's the King of Israel, and prove that he is the Savior. And he does that by referencing the Old Testament quite a bit. And today we're going to read one of the references in the Old Testament, a prophecy concerning what was about to happen in Matthew chapter 2. And sadly, what we're going to read today is a very difficult passage. It's extremely gut-wrenching when you think about it, and it's just awful, and there's no way to get around it. But Matthew chapter 2 is about the Magi visiting Herod, and then Mary and Joseph and the baby fleeing to Egypt because they learn of Herod's plan to kill Jesus. And when they slip through Herod's fingers, Herod has a very horrible reaction and orders something atrocious, because he was a man who was bent on power. He was a man who was paranoid, full of fear, and he was a man that was just wrapped up in the evil of the world. And this is what Matthew chapter 2, verses 16 through 18 says. It says, "When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more." Now, whenever I read this, I just, the Christmas story to me is so full of hope and joy and life. And then right in the middle of it, you get this passage where dozens, and scholarly speaking, most scholars agree that it's probably a few dozen children, 2 years old and under, lost their lives, taken from their parents, and taken out of this world because of an evil man. And that is so hard and gut-wrenching, and it's so difficult to read. But it's in this story, and we have to look at it. And whenever I read this passage, and again, I do Christmas reading every year, and every time I come to this passage, there's two things that always come to my mind when I read this. And maybe in the comments below, you can share what comes to your mind, because this is a very serious passage that we're dealing with here, and I want to do it respect and justice, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. But two things always come to my mind, and before I get there, I just, I can't emphasize how gut-wrenching this is, but this is a horrible part of the story. But again, two things always come to my mind. Number one, Herod just showed the reason we need a Savior. He just perpetuated the evil that is in this world, the fallen nature of mankind, the fallenness and brokenness of our humanity that would lead an individual to do something like this to innocent children is just astounding. And it leaves me gut-wrenched and in awe every time I see it. But Herod just showed the broken nature of mankind, the worst part of mankind. Now, all of us fall short of the glory of God. All of us need to ask forgiveness. And none of us are ever going to do anything close to what Herod just did. But Herod just exemplified the reason for Christ in this world. The reason that we need a Savior. The reason we need God himself to set up shop in our heart and change us. Because without him in this world, it would just get ugly and nasty. And Herod just showed us why we need Jesus, plain and simple. The far end of it, at least. But the second thing that always comes to my mind when I read this passage is that this tragedy happened right in the middle of this nativity story. And to me, it always reminds me of that this time of year for a lot of people is not the greatest time of year, because they have lost family members and friends that made this holiday special that aren't there anymore, or maybe they've had a really rough year. I mean, we're coming up on 9 months of COVID right now, and people have struggled all year round. And maybe this Christmas they're looking for a release, or they're looking for something different. Or maybe this Christmas they're just like, forget it, I don't want to do it. I just want to move on. And for some people, Christmas just brings back bad memories for them, of growing up in just horrible situations or whatever it is, guys. All I'm saying is that Christmas is not always so happy and so cheery for a lot of people. And this passage reminds me of that. And it reminds me, not only do we need a Savior, but it also reminds me that God, that Jesus has put us Christians on this earth to be used by Him for healing in this world. That God has made Christians available to help people through times like this. God has put Christians in this world to be the healing hands of Jesus. And one of the things I'm challenged with in reading this is that if I ever learn of somebody, or if I know of somebody who maybe doesn't celebrate Christmas because of tragedy or because of hurt, how can I make myself available during this time to be the blessing or to be a blessing to them and to really reach out to them? And maybe you guys know some of your friends from school that are not doing well, or that are hurting, or this time of year doesn't really mean much to them, or they just let it go, or maybe they've had tragedy in their life and this time of the year just doesn't sit well with them. You guys might know somebody like that, and you can be used by the Lord if your heart is willing and you're open and you're praying for them. You can be used in a very special way to bless somebody during the Christmas season when this time of year is not really kind to people. And so I guess my challenge for today is simply this, is how can you be a blessing to somebody? Not everybody looks at this time of year as something special or something great, maybe even bring up hurt. How can you be somebody who is used by Christ to bring light to this world for them, or to bring the light of this holiday season to them, or to be the loving hands of Christ in a time when they really need it? So guys, that's my challenge. That's what I'll throw it to you. That's my thoughts for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below. Love you guys. Merry Christmas.